beach in the Persian Gulf. The waves crash red. Not pink. Not rust-tinted at sunset. Blood red. Every hour of the day, staining skin for a week after a single swim. 60 miles away, an entire village speaks a language built from 10 others, and every summer its people abandon their homes completely. These are not unrelated oddities scattered across a map. They share a single narrow corridor of water, a 33-kilometer gap that moves 21% of the world's oil every day, and hides one of Earth's strangest collections of natural and human wonders beneath the geopolitical noise. The answers behind these mysteries only get stranger the deeper you look. Strait of Hormuz, the choke point. Every 24 hours, roughly 21 million barrels of crude oil pass through a gap narrower than the length of Manhattan. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran and Oman, connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the open Arabian Sea. At its tightest, the navigable shipping lanes squeeze down to just 2 miles wide in each direction. That means the largest oil tankers on Earth, some stretching over 1,200 feet long and carrying 2 million barrels each, thread through corridors barely wider than they are. The water looks calm from satellite images, deep blue, almost inviting. But stand on the Iranian shore at Bandar Abbas, and you feel the tension in the air before you see it. Military patrol boats cut white lines across the surface. Radar dishes rotate on cliff tops. The hum of diesel engines from passing supertankers carries across the water, like distant thunder that never stops. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy operates fast attack boats from bases along this coast. They have laid naval mines here before, during the 1980s tanker wars, when 259 ships were attacked over 8 years. Oman's Navy patrols the southern lane. American carrier groups rotate through on a schedule the whole region watches. One miscalculation, one blocked lane, one mine in the wrong place, and global oil prices spike overnight. In 2019, attacks on 6 tankers near the strait sent crude futures up 4% in a single trading session. Yet 17 million barrels still moved through the next day, and the day after. Because there is no alternative. No pipeline, no canal, no second route carries enough volume to replace what flows through this gap. The nations that line these shores built their entire economies on that fact. And tucked inside this geopolitical powder keg sits an archipelago so bizarre it seems like it belongs on another planet entirely. If a single choke point can hold the world's economy hostage, imagine what the islands inside it have been hiding for centuries. Hormuz Island, Red Beach. Step onto the southern shore of Hormuz Island, and your eyes will refuse to process what they see. The sand is red. Not brownish, not faintly tinted, deep, vivid, arterial red, stretching in every direction where the beach meets the Persian Gulf. The waves that roll in look like diluted blood. The waterline leaves crimson stains on the rocks. First-time visitors have genuinely believed something catastrophic happened here. The cause is iron oxide. Hormuz Island contains one of the highest natural concentrations of red ochre soil on Earth, with iron oxide content so dense that the ground itself functions as a pigment. This substance has been mined and exported for centuries. Local industries once shipped it globally for use in cosmetics, ceramic glazes, fabric dyes, and food coloring. The deposits are now so depleted that Iran has restricted exports to preserve what remains. Go swimming here, and the red clings to your skin. Not metaphorically. The iron oxide particles are so fine and so concentrated in the near-shore water that they coat your body in a reddish film that lasts for days. Scrubbing barely helps. Locals have used this soil as a cooking spice called golak for generations, sprinkling it on fish and bread the way Americans use paprika. About 150 families live on Hormuz Island year-round. In summer, temperatures hit 113 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity above 90%. The heat is so oppressive that outdoor activity stops entirely between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. Yet fishermen still launch their boats before dawn, and artists from mainland Iran travel here specifically for the soil, using it to create massive sand paintings during cultural festivals. If the waves pulled you under here, rescuers would search a red ocean for a body already stained the same color as the water. Right next to this crimson shoreline, the sand shifts to an entirely different, impossible color. If you have never heard of a beach that stains your skin for days, you are exactly the kind of viewer Explore Danger makes content for. Subscribe so the next one reaches you directly. Hormuz Island, Silver Beach. Walk 5 minutes north from the red beach, and the ground transforms beneath your feet. The sand here is not yellow or white. It is charcoal gray, shot through with millions of sparkling mineral fragments that flash in the sunlight like shattered glass. This is Silver Beach, and it gets its shimmer from crushed mica and silica particles ground down over millions of years by wind and tidal forces. The visual effect is immediate and disorienting. In direct sunlight, the beach looks like someone scattered metallic confetti across a dark canvas. The sparkle is so intense that photographs consistently fail to capture it accurately. Your phone camera will try to correct the exposure and lose the glitter entirely. Walk barefoot and the particles stick to your skin. Mica fragments are microscopically thin and naturally adhesive. After 10 minutes on this beach, your feet and ankles look like they have been dusted with silver body glitter. The coating does not wash off easily. Fresh water barely touches it. You need soap and vigorous scrubbing to get clean, and even then traces remain for a day or two. Because Hormuz Island is so saturated with iron oxide, the waves that reach Silver Beach still carry that signature red tint. The result is a visual collision that should not exist in nature. Bright metallic silver sand meets rust-red surf. The contrast is so extreme that geologists from the University of Tehran have published papers specifically on the mineral interaction at this shoreline. Only a few hundred tourists visit Hormuz Island in any given month, mostly Iranian travelers arriving by ferry from Bandar Abbas. There are no luxury resorts, no boardwalks. The island has a single main road. If the tide shifts suddenly and the current strengthens, there are no lifeguards stationed along this coast, and the nearest hospital is a boat ride away on the mainland. A beach that turns your body silver sits on an island where you can eat the mountains. Hormuz Island, Rainbow Valley. Imagine stepping onto a landscape where the ground shifts color with every 10 feet of walking. Deep red bleeds into bright sulfur yellow. Purple bands cut across white mineral deposits. Burnt orange patches sit next to streaks of pale green. This is Rainbow Valley on Hormuz Island, and it contains over 70 distinct minerals visible to the naked eye, each one painting the terrain a different shade. The valley is a natural salt dome that pushed upward through the Earth's crust over millions of years, carrying layers of mineral deposits with it. The red comes from iron oxide, the yellow from sulfur, the purple from manganese compounds, the white from pure salt. Geologists call Hormuz Island one of the most mineralogically diverse spots on the planet. And Rainbow Valley is where that diversity is most dramatically concentrated. The strangest fact about this place is that you can eat it. The red soil, golak, is a recognized local food ingredient. It is the only place most geologists know of where the earth itself is literally edible and has been consumed by human communities for centuries. During festivals, locals and visiting artists use the colored soils to create elaborate ground paintings, spreading intricate geometric patterns across the valley floor like living carpets. Stand here at noon, and the colors almost vibrate. As the sun moves, the mineral surfaces reflect and absorb light differently, making the entire landscape shift tone throughout the day. By late afternoon, shades that looked flat at midday suddenly glow with warmth. Photographers sometimes spend entire days here waiting for specific light angles. Hormuz Island has no paved roads through the interior. Reaching Rainbow Valley requires a dirt track and either a local guide or serious confidence in your sense of direction. If you get lost in the valleys, the mineral terrain looks identical in every direction. There is no cell service, there is no shade. In summer heat exceeding 110 degrees, dehydration can set in within 2 hours of walking without water. The colors here are natural, but some formations in this region look so sculpted they seem deliberately carved. Drop a comment below telling us which Hormuz Island beach you would visit first, the red one that stains your skin, or the silver one that glitters like metal. Hormuz Island, Valley of Statues. Nature does not use chisels, but standing in the Valley of Statues on Hormuz Island, that statement becomes genuinely hard to believe. Wind and water erosion over millions of years have carved the soft rock here into formations that look deliberately sculpted. You will see shapes that resemble crouching eagles, coiled dragons, hunched human figures, and faces with detailed features staring blankly toward the sea. The rock is a mix of calcium carbonate and salt-rich sediment, soft enough that each storm season visibly alters the formations. A pillar that looked like a standing figure 5 years ago might now resemble something entirely different. The valley is literally reshaping itself in real time on a geological clock that humans can actually observe within a single lifetime. Walk deeper, and the formations grow taller. Some pillars reach 30 feet. The pathways between them narrow until you are threading through corridors barely wide enough for 2 people side by side. The wind funnels through these gaps and produces sounds. Not subtle background noise, distinct moaning and whistling that changes pitch as the wind shifts direction. Locals say the valley whispers. After dark, most refuse to enter. At the valley's far edge, the terrain drops away without warning. A sheer cliff face plunges 80 to 100 feet straight down to the Persian Gulf below. The transition from sheltered canyon to open void happens in a single step. There are no railings, no warning signs, no barriers of any kind. The contrast between the brown and gray rock behind you and the deep blue water below creates a view that stops visitors mid-sentence. Fewer than 2,000 tourists reach Hormuz Island in an average year. Most who come never find this valley, because local guides are scarce and the interior paths are unmarked. One wrong turn at the cliff edge, especially on a windy day when the rock moaning masks the sound of crumbling ground, and the fall is not survivable. Beneath Hormuz Island's surface, there is a cave so silent it erases the outside world entirely. Hormuz Island, Salt Goddess Cave. Step inside, and the first thing you lose is sound. The Salt Goddess Cave on Hormuz Island is formed entirely of crystallized salt, and the dense mineral walls absorb sound so completely that within 50 feet of the entrance, the outside world goes silent. No wind, no waves, no birds, just your own heartbeat and the sound of your breathing echoing off surfaces that sparkle like crushed diamonds. This cave sits inside a massive salt dome that has been pushing upward through the island's crust for thousands of years. Unlike limestone caves shaped by water-dissolving rock, this one was created by geological pressure forcing pure salt deposits toward the surface. The result is a cavern where every wall, every ceiling formation, and every floor surface is made of salt crystal. Stalactites hang from the ceiling like frozen chandeliers, some pure white, others streaked with red and purple mineral veins. The formations are sharp. Touch the wrong surface carelessly, and the crystalline edges will cut skin as cleanly as glass. The air inside is saturated with salt particles, making it extraordinarily pure. People with respiratory conditions travel here specifically to breathe the cave air, a practice called halotherapy that has documented benefits for asthma and bronchitis sufferers. Locals call this place the Salt Goddess because they believe the mineral environment carries purifying energy. Whether or not you share that belief, the physical experience is undeniable. The silence is so complete that visitors report hearing their own pulse in their ears. The temperature inside holds steady, around 77 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of the brutal heat outside. The shimmer from the salt walls under flashlight creates moving patterns on every surface. The cave is unmapped beyond its first 200 meters. No official surveys have documented its full depth. Venture too far without a guide, and the branching tunnels become a maze with no distinguishing features. Every wall looks identical. Every passage looks the same. In total darkness, disorientation takes minutes, not hours. We are leaving Hormuz Island now, and crossing to a place where the canyons are so narrow you can touch both walls at once. The fact that a cave made entirely of edible salt exists inside a geopolitical flashpoint is the kind of story only Explore Danger covers with this depth. A like helps this reach more people who appreciate that. Keshem Island, Chaku Canyon. Keshem is the largest island in the Persian Gulf. It stretches over 50 miles long and sits just a few kilometers off the Iranian mainland, directly inside the Strait of Hormuz. About 150,000 people live here, and hidden in its rocky interior is a canyon that feels less like geography and more like the earth simply cracked open. Chaku Canyon is a narrow fracture in the island's limestone bedrock. The walls rise vertically over 100 feet on both sides. At the narrowest points, you can extend both arms and press your palms flat against opposing rock faces simultaneously. The gap is that tight. Looking up from the canyon floor, the sky is a thin blue ribbon barely visible between the towering walls. The name Chaku means four wells in the local dialect. Carved into the canyon floor, you can still see ancient hand-cut holes designed to catch and store rainwater. In a region where fresh water is desperately scarce, these wells kept communities alive for centuries.
The engineering is simple but brilliant. Rainwater funnels down the vertical walls, collects in the carved basins, and stays cool in the permanent shade of the narrow canyon. Wind has spent millions of years sculpting the limestone here. The walls are covered in smooth, wave-like erosion patterns that make the rock look like melted wax, frozen mid-drip. Running your hand along the surface feels like touching something organic, not geological.
The stone is cool, even when surface temperatures above the canyon exceed 110 degrees. Chaku was a natural fortress. During centuries of conflict and piracy in the strait, local villagers would retreat into these narrow passages. An entire armed force could march past the canyon entrance and never detect the people hiding inside. The vertical walls blocked sightlines completely. The acoustic properties dampened sound. It was invisibility engineered by erosion. If the canyon walls shifted even slightly during a seismic event, anyone inside would be sealed in, with no possibility of rescue. Keshem sits on an active tectonic zone, and minor earthquakes are recorded here regularly. Chaku hides people from armies. But the next valley on Keshem hides something that sounds like it is alive. Keshem Island, Stars Valley. Locals on Keshem have a story they have told for generations. A star fell from the sky, slammed into the island, and the impact threw earth in every direction, leaving behind a forest of jagged stone pillars. Geologists say wind and rain erosion created Stars Valley over millions of years. But standing among the formations at dusk, with the wind screaming through the crevices, the star story feels more honest than the science. The pillars here reach up to 40 feet tall. They are made of sedimentary rock soft enough that every major storm reshapes them visibly. A formation photographed a decade ago may be unrecognizable today. The valley is a living sculpture gallery where the artist is time itself, and the medium is stone that refuses to hold still. The wind is the defining feature. As air moves through the narrow gaps between pillars and under natural stone arches, it produces sounds that range from low moaning to high-pitched shrieking. The acoustic effect is so pronounced that locals attribute it to jinn, supernatural beings from Islamic tradition. Many residents of nearby villages refuse to enter Stars Valley after sunset. The sounds intensify at night when temperature drops cause the rock to contract and shift, changing the size of gaps the wind passes through. The formations create a maze with no marked trails. The pillars all look similar from ground level. Visitors who wander off the rough paths that local guides follow can lose orientation within minutes. The valley floor is uneven, scattered with loose rock fragments that shift underfoot. A twisted ankle here means a difficult extraction because vehicle access ends more than a kilometer from the valley's core formations. Stars Valley sits on the same tectonic zone as the rest of Keshem. The soft rock that makes the formations so dramatic also makes them fragile. Pillars have collapsed without warning. Standing beneath a 40-foot column of rock that could fracture in an earthquake or a heavy storm is a gamble most visitors do not consciously calculate. Deep beneath this island, there is a salt cave that stretches further underground than anything you have likely imagined. If the wind sounds at Stars Valley gave you chills just reading about them, share this video with someone who would feel the same way. Keshem Island, Namakdan Salt Cave. Over 6 kilometers long, that makes Namakdan the longest salt cave on Earth. It burrows through the southern end of Keshem Island like a frozen underground river made entirely of crystallized mineral. The entrance does not prepare you for what is inside.
you step through a modest opening in a hillside and descend into a world that has no business existing. The walls are layered in bands of red, purple, white, and gray. Each color represents a different mineral deposit, laid down over millions of years as the salt dome pushed upward through the Earth's crust. The deeper you walk, the more intense the colors become. After 500 meters, you reach passages where salt stalactites hang from the ceiling in dense clusters, some over 3 feet long, white and translucent, glowing when a flashlight passes through them. Salt rivers line portions of the cave floor. These are not flowing water. They are mineral formations that look exactly like frozen waterfalls, complete with rippled surfaces and cascading shapes. The optical illusion is so convincing that first-time visitors instinctively step carefully, expecting to splash into liquid. The air quality inside Namakdan is medically significant. The high salt concentration creates an environment virtually free of allergens, bacteria, and pollutants.
Researchers from Iranian universities have documented measurable improvement in respiratory function among subjects who spent extended time in the cave. Some visitors come exclusively for the air, sitting in the darkness and breathing slowly for hours. No complete survey of Namakdan has ever been published. The cave extends beyond what exploration teams have mapped, with side passages branching into unmeasured darkness. The salt formations are fragile. Structural collapses have blocked previously accessible passages. A caver who pushes beyond the mapped sections risks entering tunnels that could seal behind them if a formation shifts. There is no cell signal underground, no emergency infrastructure. The cave does not care that you are inside it. Above this cave, an entire village has been catching wind in towers for over 1,000 years. Namakdan is the longest salt cave on the planet, and most people have never heard of it. That is exactly the gap Explore Danger exists to fill. Subscribe if that matters to you. Keshem Island, Loft Village. From a distance, Loft looks like a village wearing a crown. Dozens of tall, rectangular towers rise above the mud-brown rooftops, piercing the skyline like stone chimneys. These are bajirs, wind-catching towers, and Loft has the highest concentration of them in all of Iran. They are not decorative. They are survival technology perfected over centuries in one of the hottest inhabited places on Earth. Each badger works like a natural air conditioning unit. The tower catches whatever breeze moves across the Persian Gulf, channels it downward through internal shafts, and pushes cooled air into the rooms below. No electricity, no moving parts, no fuel. In summer, when outdoor temperatures on Keshem exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit, the interiors of homes with functioning badgers remain noticeably cooler. The engineering dates back centuries and has never been improved upon for this specific climate because it did not need to be. Behind the village, the ruins of Nadiri Fortress sit on a low hill. Climb to the top and you see Laft in full panorama. The brown mud brick homes, the forest of wind towers, the blue water of the Persian Gulf beyond. And anchored at the shore, the massive wooden hulls of traditional Lenje boats. The most striking human detail in Laft is the borga. Women here wear decorative face masks that cover the forehead, nose, and upper lip. The masks often resemble a stylized mustache. They originated as protection against sun and sandstorms, but local tradition holds a second purpose. During historical raids by pirates and invaders, the masks were intended to make women appear to be male warriors from a distance, discouraging attackers from targeting the village. Beside Nadiri Fortress lies the Tala Well system.
Ancient engineers dug 366 wells, one for each day of a leap year. Each day, villagers would open only one well, rotating through the full cycle to prevent any single source from running dry. About 100 wells survive today. In a landscape where fresh water means the difference between a living village and an abandoned ruin, losing another well is losing another day of survival. The boats anchored at Laft's shore are built by hand, using methods 1,000 years old. Keshem Island, Lenje Shipyard. Massive wooden skeletons rise out of the sand along Keshem's southern coast, like beached whales stripped to their ribs. These are Lenjes, traditional cargo vessels, and they are being built the same way they have been built for over 1,000 years. The Lenje Shipyard is a UNESCO-recognized living heritage site, and not a single blueprint exists anywhere on its grounds. Every measurement lives in the builder's memory. Fathers pass dimensions, curves, angles, and structural sequences to their sons through direct demonstration. There are no written plans, no computer models, no laser-guided cuts. The primary tools are hand saws, hammers, and chisels. The wood is imported teak from India and Myanmar, chosen because it resists saltwater rot better than almost any timber on Earth. A finished Lenje stretches over 100 feet long. The hull is thick enough to survive open ocean crossings to East Africa, a journey these boats have made routinely for centuries. Some Lenjes remain seaworthy for 100 years. In a world that builds ships from welded steel in automated dry docks, the idea that a wooden boat built from memory can cross the Arabian Sea and last a century sounds like legend. It is documented fact. The sound of the shipyard carries across the beach, a rhythmic thump of mallet on wood that has been the background pulse of this coastline for generations. Builders balance on narrow hull ribs 20 feet above the sand with no harnesses and no safety nets. One misstep means a fall onto hard-packed ground or protruding wooden frames below. Watch a master builder shape a curved rib from a raw teak plank using only hand tools, and you are watching a form of engineering intelligence that predates written mathematics. The precision required to build a vessel this large from memory alone, one that must withstand open ocean storms and carry tons of cargo, is staggering. If the proportions are wrong by even a small margin, the hull flexes incorrectly under wave stress, and the boat breaks apart at sea. Between Keshem and the Iranian mainland, an entire forest floats on salt water twice a day. A 1,000-year-old shipbuilding tradition with no blueprints and UNESCO recognition. If this does not deserve a like, nothing does. Hara Mangrove Forest. Twice every day, this forest performs a vanishing act. When the tide rises in the narrow channel between Keshem Island and mainland Iran, seawater climbs the trunks of the Hara Mangrove Forest until the trees appear to float on the surface. Their roots disappear. Their canopy hovers above the waterline like a green island suspended in midair. When the tide drops, the water reveals a tangled root system so dense and complex, it looks like a web designed to trap anything that enters. The Hara Forest covers roughly 20,000 acres and is designated a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve. The dominant species is Avicennia marina, named after the legendary Persian physician Ibn Sina. This tree does something that should be biologically impossible.
It drinks salt water directly. Its bark acts as a filtration membrane, blocking salt molecules and allowing only fresh water to pass into the trunk. Excess salt gets pushed to the leaf surfaces and excreted in visible white crystals. The tree literally sweats salt. This mechanism allows the forest to thrive in water that would kill virtually any other tree species on Earth. The roots create a protected nursery zone for fish, shrimp, and sea turtle hatchlings. Thousands of migratory birds stop here during winter, including flamingos, pelicans, egrets, and rare falcons that use the canopy as a resting and hunting platform. Visitors can only enter the forest by small boat, navigating narrow tidal channels that shift position as the water level changes. A boat that enters at high tide may find its channel drained to mud within hours, stranding passengers in a maze of exposed roots and soft sediment that can swallow a leg to the knee. The tidal schedule is not a suggestion here. It is the difference between a peaceful boat tour and an overnight survival situation, in waist-deep mud with no way to call for help. Local communities on Keshem harvest mangrove leaves as livestock feed, but the practice is tightly regulated. Damage to the root system weakens the forest's ability to filter salt, and a weakened forest means a collapsing nursery for the marine life that local fishermen depend on. Remove the trees, and you remove the fish. Remove the fish, and you remove the livelihood of thousands of families. The Portuguese once built a fort on Hormuz Island to control these waters with cannons and stone walls. Most nature documentaries skip ecosystems this complex. Explore Danger does not. If that approach resonates with you, subscribing takes 2 seconds. Portuguese Fort, Hormuz Island. 500 years ago, the Portuguese Empire decided it wanted to own the Strait of Hormuz. They built their answer in coral stone and military mortar on the northern tip of Hormuz Island. The fort still stands today, its thick reddish-brown walls facing the water, where supertankers now pass through the same shipping lane that Portuguese warships once patrolled. Construction began in 1507 under the command of Afonso de Albuquerque. The walls are made from local coral stone, bonded with a specialized morite that has resisted 5 centuries of salt air, humidity, and temperature extremes exceeding 130 degrees Fahrenheit in direct summer sun. The architectural design is European military standard of the era, but every material came from the Gulf itself. The result is a building that looks like it belongs simultaneously in Lisbon and in the desert. Inside the fort, the Portuguese built a church entirely below ground level. The reason was not spiritual, it was thermal. Surface temperatures on Hormuz Island made above-ground worship physically unbearable. The subterranean church features Gothic-style stone columns and arched vaults that create a cool, dim space even in peak summer. It remains one of the earliest documented examples of deliberate underground climate engineering in military architecture. Bronze and iron cannons sit scattered across the fort grounds, rusted to near solid masses by centuries of salt exposure. They once pointed directly at the strait's shipping lanes. Any vessel attempting to pass without Portuguese permission faced coordinated cannon fire from elevated positions. The fort also contains a massive rainwater collection cistern engineered to sustain a full garrison through prolonged siege. On an island with almost no natural fresh water, this cistern was the difference between holding the fort and abandoning it. The Portuguese lost Hormuz Island in 1622, when a combined Persian and English force besieged the fort and starved the garrison. The walls they built to control global trade still stand. The cannons they aimed at the world's most important waterway still point at the sea. But the tankers that pass now carry more economic power in a single hull than the entire Portuguese navy possessed. Hidden in the cliffs of Keshem, there are caves that served as a different kind of fortress entirely. Karbas Cave, Keshem Island. High on a vertical cliff face overlooking the Strait of Hormuz, a row of dark openings stares out at the sea like hollow eyes. These are the Karbas Caves, and they have served as a human refuge for over 2,500 years. Part of the system was carved by water and geological forces. The rest was carved by human hands, expanded deliberately by people who needed a place to disappear. The caves sit roughly 150 feet above the waterline. Reaching them requires climbing a steep, exposed rock face with no constructed path. Once inside, the system opens into a network of tunnels and small chambers connected by narrow passages that force movement in single file. The layout is deliberately confusing. Invaders who made it past the climb would enter a maze designed to slow and disorient them. During the centuries when piracy dominated the strait, the villagers of Keshem used these caves as emergency shelters. When pirate ships appeared on the horizon, families would climb the cliff face and vanish into the rock. Mothers hushed children in pitch darkness, while armed crews searched the shoreline below. Carvings on the interior walls document the presence of multiple cultures across different centuries, each one leaving marks that proved this place had saved them. From the cave openings, the view of the strait is unobstructed for miles. You can see every vessel approaching from either direction. This was the ultimate early warning system, built by geology and refined by desperation. A community that lived under constant threat of abduction, slavery, and violence created a vertical fortress that required no weapons to defend. The cliff itself was the weapon. The rock face is crumbling. Erosion has weakened the stone around several cave openings, and sections of the cliff have collapsed in recent decades. No structural reinforcement has been installed. Visitors who climb to the caves today do so at their own risk, on a deteriorating surface above a drop that ends on rocks and shallow water. The same geology that protected thousands of people for millennia is now slowly destroying the evidence that they were ever there. Across the strait, a tiny island offers something dramatically different from danger and history. If ancient pirate defense caves carved into cliffs are not the kind of content you expected from a video about the Strait of Hormuz, you are beginning to understand what Explore Danger does differently. A like tells us to keep going deeper. Hengam Island. Crystal clear water. No cars. Wild dolphins that swim directly up to your boat without fear. Hengam Island sits just south of Keshem in the Persian Gulf, and it operates on a rhythm so far removed from the geopolitical tension of the strait that it feels like a different dimension entirely. The island has only 2 small villages and a permanent population of a few hundred people. There are almost no motorized vehicles. The primary sounds are waves, wind, and the occasional call of a hawksbill sea turtle surfacing near shore. The hawksbill is critically endangered globally, with fewer than 25,000 nesting females estimated worldwide, and Hengam's undeveloped coastline provides one of their last undisturbed habitats in the Persian Gulf. A short boat ride from the pier and you are surrounded by dolphins. Not a lucky sighting, a near guarantee. Pods of Indo-Pacific humpback dolphins inhabit these waters year-round, and they approach tourist boats with visible curiosity. They ride bow waves, surface within arm's reach, and seem to actively enjoy the interaction. Marine biologists studying the population have noted that Hengam's dolphins show unusually low stress markers around human vessels, likely because boat traffic here remains minimal and non-threatening. On the island's rocky interior, Jabir gazelles navigate the arid slopes. These small, agile antelopes are native to the region and increasingly rare on the mainland. Hengam's isolation has preserved a population that roams freely with almost no human interference. Beneath the waterline, snorkelers encounter dense schools of tropical fish, healthy coral formations, and visibility that regularly exceeds 50 feet. At night, with virtually zero light pollution, bioluminescent phytoplankton occasionally illuminate the shoreline in pale blue-green light. The effect transforms the water's edge into something that looks digitally manufactured, but is entirely biological. There are no emergency services on Hengam, no hospital, no Coast Guard station. A medical emergency here means a boat ride to Keshem, and then potentially another to the mainland. Paradise has a price, and the price is that help is always far away. We are crossing the strait now to Oman's Musandam Peninsula, where an entire village can only be reached by sea. Kumzar Village, Musandam Peninsula. No road leads to Kumzar, no trail, no path through the mountains. The only way in is by boat or helicopter. This village of roughly 4,000 people sits at the very northern tip of Oman's Musandam Peninsula, wedged between towering limestone cliffs and the Strait of Hormuz itself. From Kumzar's shoreline, you can watch supertankers carrying millions of barrels of oil pass close enough to read their hull markings. The people here speak Kumzari, a language that exists nowhere else on Earth. Linguists have identified elements of at least 10 different languages woven into it, including Farsi, Arabic, Portuguese, Hindi, and English. Each layer reflects a century of contact with traders, colonizers, and sailors who stopped at this isolated point over 700 years of continuous habitation. Kumzari is not written down in any standardized form. It lives entirely in spoken tradition. Every summer, Kumzar empties. For roughly 3 months between June and September, the cliffs that surround the village trap heat so effectively that daytime temperatures become physically unbearable. The entire community boards boats and migrates to the city of Hasab to harvest dates and wait out the worst of the heat. When autumn arrives, they return together. This seasonal migration has continued for generations without interruption. The village layout reflects the extreme scarcity of flat ground. Houses are built pressed against each other, separated by alleys so narrow that 2 people cannot walk side by side. The density creates a labyrinth of shaded passages that provide some relief from the sun, but also means that fire is an existential threat. A blaze in one home can spread through the entire settlement before there is any way to contain it. Kumzar's fishermen are considered among the most skilled in the Gulf. They navigate waters where currents from the strait meet tidal patterns from the Gulf of Oman, creating unpredictable conditions that have capsized larger vessels. A fishing boat lost here drifts into one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth, directly into the path of tankers whose crews cannot see a small wooden vessel until it is far too late. The mountain looming above Kumzar holds fossils that prove the entire peak was once an ocean floor. A village with its own language, a seasonal mass migration, and supertankers passing within eyeshot. If this is not one of the most unique communities on Earth, nothing is. Drop a comment if you have ever heard of Kumzar before today. Jebel Harim, Musandam Peninsula. At 2,087 meters above sea level, Jebel Harim is the highest peak on the Musandam Peninsula. Its name translates from Arabic as Mountain of the Women. The name is not poetic. It is a record of survival strategy. When Portuguese colonists and pirates raided coastal villages, the men were often at sea fishing.
Women and children would climb to the summit to hide, using the mountain itself as a fortress that no invading force could practically assault. The drive to the summit follows a winding road cut into sheer limestone cliffs. The road clings to the precipice with no guardrails and no shoulders. Drop-offs exceed 1,000 feet in several sections. The surface alternates between rough gravel and exposed bedrock. Vehicles with low clearance do not make it past the first third. Many visitors who begin the ascent turn back when the road narrows to single vehicle width, with blind switchbacks above vertical drops. At the top, the view is staggering. You can see the fjords of Musandam cutting into the peninsula below like jagged knife wounds filled with turquoise water. The limestone valleys stretch in every direction. On a clear day, the Strait of Hormuz is visible in the distance, a thin blue line of water carrying the world's energy supply. Pick up any rock near the summit and examine it closely. You will find fossils, fish skeletons, coral fragments, shell imprints,
all clearly visible, pressed into stone over 2,000 meters above the current sea level. This entire mountain was once the bottom of an ancient ocean. Tectonic forces lifted it into the sky over millions of years, carrying the proof of its origin embedded in every layer. The climate at the peak is dramatically different from the coast below. While Kasab bakes at over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the summit of Jebel Harim stays cool and breezy. In winter, temperatures occasionally drop below freezing. Frost forms on the rocks. Light snow has been documented, an almost unheard-of event in this part of the Arabian Peninsula. A mountain that was once an ocean floor now occasionally wears snow. The Earth has a sense of irony that geology makes visible. Tucked in the fjords below this mountain, a tiny island drove British soldiers to madness. Telegraph Island, Musandam Fjords. Ever heard someone say, "going round the bend"? The phrase means losing your mind. It was born on a scorching rock smaller than a football field, hidden inside a curving fjord in Oman's Musandam Peninsula. Telegraph Island is where the British Empire's grand communication project met the limits of human psychological endurance. In 1864, Britain laid a telegraph cable from London to India, and this island became a repeater station. The job was simple on paper. Station a small crew here to maintain the signal. The reality was a form of torture that no one anticipated. The island has no fresh water, no natural shade. Summer temperatures exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit, amplified by the surrounding limestone cliffs that reflect heat inward from every direction. The crew had no air conditioning, no refrigeration, and communication only through the telegraph line they were maintaining. The isolation was total. The nearest settlement was hours away by boat. Supply ships came infrequently. The men stationed here had nothing to do between maintenance tasks, except stare at rock walls and boiling water. Within months, soldiers began exhibiting severe psychological distress. Reports documented hallucinations, violent outbursts, and complete mental breakdowns. Because the island sits around a bend in the narrow fjord, invisible from the open sea, the phrase "going round the bend" entered the English language as a description of losing one's sanity. The station lasted only about 5 years before Britain abandoned it. The cable was rerouted, the crew was evacuated. Today, crumbling stone foundations are the only evidence that anyone tried to live here at all. The ruins sit low against the rock, barely distinguishable from the natural terrain. Now, Telegraph Island is one of the most popular stops on dhow cruises through the Musandam Fjords. Tourists anchor nearby and snorkel in water so clear you can see the bottom at 40 feet. Colorful coral and dense fish populations thrive in the protected fjord. The contrast is almost cruel. A place that systematically destroyed human minds is now a destination where people come to relax. The rock does not remember what it did. But the English language still carries the scar. The fortress guarding these fjords has been standing since before America was a country. The phrase, "going round the bend," was literally invented on a rock in the Strait of Hormuz. If that single fact surprised you, there is much more ahead. Stay with us. Kasab Castle, Musandam Peninsula. A stone fortress the color of desert sand sits directly at the water's edge in Kasab, staring down the throat of the Strait of Hormuz. The Portuguese built it in 1623 to control shipping through the strait. The Omanis took it back by force in 1644. It has been standing watch over these waters through 400 years of empires, wars, and oil booms. The walls are thick coral stone, reinforced with lime mortar. The main circular tower rises from the center of the compound and houses exhibits spanning centuries of Gulf history. Inside, you will find traditional jewelry, hand-forged weapons, aged Quran manuscripts, and a reconstructed kitchen from a time when the fort served as the administrative center of the entire Musandam region. The courtyard contains full-sized traditional boats, some designs now extinct, displayed as permanently beached monuments to seafaring traditions that have no living practitioners. One of the strangest features inside the castle grounds is the Beit al-Kufl, or House of Locks. These are small, windowless stone structures with heavy doors designed to store valuables. Before the modern banking system, residents of Kasab would lock their dates, grain, and dried fish inside these structures during long absences. The thick stone walls kept the interior cool enough to preserve food and kept thieves out through sheer structural stubbornness. Climb the ramparts, and the view has not changed in 4 centuries. The harbor spreads below, dhow boats bobbing at anchor. Beyond them, the strait. The same water the Portuguese tried to own. The same lanes that now carry 21 million barrels of oil per day. Standing where soldiers stood in 1623, watching the same shipping lane they watched, the compression of history into a single visual frame is physically disorienting. Time collapses. The geopolitics change. The water does not. The fort has been restored, but the restoration preserved the original military architecture faithfully. The cannon mounts still point seaward. The watchtower sightlines still cover the harbor entrance. A building designed to project imperial power over a critical waterway now serves as a museum, explaining why that waterway still matters more than almost any other place on Earth. Down the coast from Kasab, one final fort stands guard at a border most travelers never cross. Kasab Castle has watched the Strait of Hormuz for 400 years. If this script has held you this long, you clearly value content with substance. Subscribe to Explore Danger so the next documentary-length video reaches you the moment it drops. Buka Fort, Musandam Peninsula. If you drive along the coast from the UAE border into Oman's Musandam region, the town of Buka appears almost without warning. Low buildings, quiet streets, a mosque with a minaret that catches the light. And sitting directly at the water's edge, a 17th century fort with walls the color of burnt earth, rising against a backdrop of pale limestone mountains. Buka Fort was originally built by the Portuguese in 1623, the same year they constructed Kasab Castle further north. The Omanis eventually claimed it, and the fort became a local administrative and defensive stronghold.
Its most distinctive architectural feature is the asymmetry of its two main towers. One is massive and round, designed to support heavy cannon platforms with wide firing arcs across the harbor. The other is square, built as living quarters for the local governing authority. The contrast between the two towers tells you everything about the building's dual identity. It was simultaneously a weapon and a home. A moat once surrounded the entire structure, fed by tidal water from the harbor. Any force attempting to breach the walls had to cross open water under cannon fire before reaching the stone. The moat has since been filled, but the channels are still visible in the foundation layout. The walls themselves are constructed from local stone, bonded with a shell-based morite that has proven remarkably resistant to the corrosive salt air of the Gulf. The fort received a major restoration in the 1990s that stabilized the structure without altering its military character. Climb the ramparts, and one side shows you the harbor, fishing boats, and the open water of the strait. The other side shows jagged mountain ridges rising sharply from the coastline. The visual contrast between the soft blue water and the hard gray rock is stark enough to make you pause. Buqa receives almost no tourist traffic. Most visitors to Musandam go directly to Khassab and never drive south. Standing alone on the ramparts of a 400-year-old fort, looking at a harbor that has not fundamentally changed since Portuguese cannons aimed at these waters, you experience a quality of silence that crowded historical sites cannot offer. It is the silence of a place that has outlasted every empire that ever tried to claim it. The Strait of Hormuz holds 21% of the world's daily oil supply, in a corridor narrower than most American lakes. That fact alone would make it one of the most consequential places on Earth. But what sits inside and around that corridor, the red beaches that stain your body, the edible mountains, the salt caves stretching miles underground, the villages that empty every summer and refill every fall, the hand-built wooden ships that outlast steel, the caves where families hid from pirates for 2,500 years. These are not footnotes to the oil story. They are the story. The geopolitics will shift. The borders will be redrawn. The oil will eventually run dry, but the salt goddess cave will still be growing in the dark. The wind will still scream through Stars Valley. And the red waves will still crash on Hormuz Island, long after the last tanker passes through. Sit with that for a moment. Of everything we covered today, which place stayed with you? Which one will you still be thinking about tomorrow? Drop it in the comments. And if this journey across the Strait of Hormuz showed you something you had never seen before, Explore Danger has more waiting for you.